And now we turn overseas, where Israeli leaders say that airstrikes have killed 3 senior Hamas leaders. This, as a senior Hamas leader says, the group is in fact responsible for the kidnappings back in June of 3 Israeli teens along the West Bank. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he will move forward with military operations in the Gaza Strip. Here now to speak on this, Ambassador Ido Aharoni. He is Consul General of Israel, and he's based in New York, about the ongoing crisis. He's kind enough to join us on. Ido, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, for those not close to the situation, were you remotely surprised that the ceasefire, in fact, ended as soon as it did?
Well, I think Hamas is following a very clear pattern. They violate just about every ceasefire. This was the 8th ceasefire that they violated. By the way, interestingly, 3 of them were initiated by Hamas directly. So they have a very poor record of living up to their promises, and we weren't surprised.
Is there a different military tactic strategy here, going directly after the Hamas leaders like we've seen in the back-to-back strikes here? Is that a conscious different strategy than prior?
We feel that we're fighting the fight of the free world, and the fight of the free world requires 2 things: determination and perseverance. We have to deprive Hamas of their capabilities, their military capabilities, because the most dangerous weapon they have is their deadly, brutal ideology. We just saw yesterday what ISIS, the ideological twin of Hamas, did to American photojournalist James Foley. This is the kind of enemy we're dealing with. Their entire ideology is based on the obliteration of the State of Israel, of the Jewish people, and Western values.
How do you navigate between going after the extremist elements of Hamas and then not disenfranchising Palestinians, or in fact creating like a recurring theme here, this cyclical thing where there's dislocation and then the despising of Israel on the part of the Palestinians, even those that aren't sympathetic to the Hamas cause? How does this cycle ever break?
Well, I'm glad you're asking this question, because I believe that's the most important issue at hand. Our viewers have to understand that there are 2 types of camps within the Palestinian society. You have the Palestinian national movement, with which we have a conflict, and we've been negotiating a deal since 1993, sometimes with more success, sometimes with less success. But at the end of the day, we all agree on the 2-state solution, and now the question is, how are we going to get there? But this is not the case with Hamas. Hamas is not part of that conversation. In fact, Hamas views the Palestinian national movement, with which we've been dealing since 1993, as their enemy, no less than they view Israel to be their enemy. And this is an important point for the American viewer to understand. Hamas is like ISIS, is like Al-Qaeda, it's like Hezbollah, it's like Islamic Jihad. They're not interested in a compromise. They're not interested in the Palestinian nation-state concept as the solution to the Palestinian problem, because they do not believe in nationalism. They believe in Islamic rule, and they believe in the destruction of Western civilization as we know it. It's all in their charter, and they're working very hard to live up to it.
You know, again, when you sit back here thousands of miles away and you see this play out in Technicolor, and you see some of the tragic incidents, and you'll see the pictures of the dead Palestinian kids on the beach, or the parents carrying their kids out of rubble, and then you see, conversely, some of the terrorist acts happening within your borders at the hands of Hamas. There seems to be a never-ending nature to this, and there is zero reason for optimism that maybe the calendar will change, but it's going to be the same fight, maybe with different folks representing the same sides. What reason do you have whatsoever for any optimism that a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we're not having the exact same conversation?
Optimism, I believe in optimism. I think we should all believe in optimism. But at this particular moment in time, the Middle East is disintegrating. What we're seeing is yet another chapter, bloody chapter, in a century-old Arab/Palestinian onslaught on Jewish national sovereignty in the land of Israel. I always remind my listeners of this, the impact that one sniper had in Washington, D.C. 10 years ago paralyzing the entire Washington, D.C. area, inflicting damage on Washington, D.C.'s economy that could be estimated in the billions. And this was just one sniper. So imagine, you have 2/3 of Israel's population in bomb shelters for nearly 2 months. Imagine what it does to Israel's economy, what it does to Israeli businesses, to Israeli industry. So we have to understand terrorism is not just about the military confrontation. Terrorism is a much bigger issue. You're talking about devastating the mentality, the social fabric of a society, of an economy. And
Mr. Aharoni, I really appreciate a few minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Richard.
When we come back, everyone, the military like you've never seen it before. Author Helen Thorpe, she speaks to RFL about her new book, Soldier Girls, the battles of 3 women at home and at war.